it's one that I've gotten from a lot of veterans that have reached out, and that's where to start when looking for the role they should focus on, and kind of, how they can dig deep into just kind of solidifying their interest in the world of cyber.
That's a good question. It is a complex beast. Cyber computer science was 100% science. IT, people process technology, introduced human beings 33% into the equation. I argue that cyber is 20% tech, 80% human behavior. So there's a lot more to cyber than there is to IT or computer science, although they're all subsets and they blend. That's very true. If somebody really wants to understand what is actually out there in the cyberspace, the first place I send them or ask them to look at is the nice cybersecurity workforce framework. It's the framework. It's 7 categories, 33 specialty areas, 52 work roles. And under those 52 work roles, you have KSAs and tasks, knowledge, skills, abilities, and tasks. One of the easiest ways, and a lot of the hiring managers are using that as a common lexicon, the vernacular, to tie academia to corporate to government and speak the same language. So one of the easiest ways is to go in and look and investigate some of the work roles, understanding what your interests are, what your strengths are, and look at what the, not so much the knowledge piece, although that's important, but the skills and abilities. And you'll find matches. There are things out there that are natural matches. That now that doesn't mean it's a guarantee it's going to work, but this sort of has to be a synthesis between what do I really enjoy, because cyber is not just tech. We can be doing risk management. We can be doing quality assurance. We can be doing a lot of things, right? And then identifying in those KSAs, knowledge, skills, abilities, and tasks associated with work roles, what may look like a good fit as a starting point, as a research project. And then take it from there and match them up against individual goals and abilities and strengths. But see, the key to this, Peter, is an honest self-assessment and where do I really want to be? If you're not a coder and if you're not a programmer, and if that is not your thing and you hate math, no promise of a 6-figure job is going to make you good at math. You have to be honest with yourself and understand what it is you truly want to do, what you're passionate about. But that's a good place to start.
Awesome. I think that was a really good way to answer it. And I sent a link to the framework in the chat. So now we'll open it up to more questions. I have some more I want to ask you throughout, Michael, that we've gotten common pretty commonly, but I want to open the floor up to anyone, or if they want to send it in the chat now.
Hey, Michael. I mean, obviously I'm a graduate, thanks to Peter Klein and Boost of Books for getting me into your first kind of streamlined course. One of the things that stood out with me that I think the audience might like to hear is how you used behavior as a part of how you created your pipeline.
Okay, that's a good question. I appreciate that, Paul. I'm sorry?
It's just people entering. You can continue.
Oh, okay. I'm a huge fan of the why and not just the what and the how. I would rather sell a solution than a tool, and I would rather people understand the why, what drives us to do what we do. So, for example, in the disaster response, there's a lot of human behavior in there. When we teach intelligence, there's a lot of cognitive psychology. When we teach leadership, there's a lot of organizational psychology. Once again, it's the people piece. And you can be the greatest tech person in the world. You can just be a rock star. But if you don't have the skills to interact, the good communication skills, the negotiation, the alternative dispute resolution, that's the first part of it. But then the other psychology is the psychology that's more difficult. And that's that introspection, that's the honest introspection. where one has to truly identify one's strengths and weaknesses and what am I really good at? What am I really not? And that honesty, and I have two rules of honesty. One, honesty is not painful. Okay. People hear, I'm going to tell you the painful truth. I'm going to tell you the brutal truth. No, honesty is not painful. The conclusions we derive from it may be, but honesty is not. And the second thing is honesty does not create reality. It reveals it. The fact that you admit it does not make it so. It always is. It's now you coming to terms with it. So understanding that cyber is multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, innovation happens at the cross section of disciplines. We're working with a very diverse group of people with divergent backgrounds coming together for a common cause, and that the industry itself is interdisciplinary along with the people in it. We have to learn how to manage behavior. We have to learn how to manage interaction and people skills and so on and so forth. As opposed to, yeah, true enough, true enough. If you know the enemy and yourself, you will win 1,000 battles. I like that. But that's true. One has to really know oneself. But once again, I truly believe that cyber, unlike its counterparts, is 80% human behavior. There has to be psychology. And even when we teach disaster response, and Paul could attest to this, I dedicate when we're talking about standing up secondary sites and whatever it might be, seating arrangements. And nobody would expect to see seating arrangements when you're planning out a secondary site for disaster response. But you know that whenever you go to a formal function, who sits at what table is really important. And people argue over that. So that's a human condition. It's something we have to think about. So we try to build that into everything that we do, understanding that while we're doing our jobs, the human condition will always be present. We always have to be cognizant of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that was well said. Michael, I had another one, and that's there's a lot of people that we see, especially transitioning military coming out and just going after certification, A plus, Net plus, Security plus, and thinking that is kind of the holy grail to their post-transition employment. And I'm not necessarily saying it is, and I'm not the cyber expert, but I was wondering what advice you would have for them.
Certs are good. Okay, so first of all, full transparency, I'm a champion of higher education. So my baseline theory is certifications will get you a job interview, whereas education will get you a career. All right. So having baseline certifications is good. The industry has a benchmark. Unfortunately, that's being pushed a lot more by hiring managers than it is by anybody else. And that is part of the common myth. Now, having basic certs is good. A plus, Sec plus, Net plus, whatever they may be. Having a good foundation of knowledge is important. What I would say with the certifications is not to be specialized out of the box. It's important to have those good foundational skills. So when you'll see people say, I want to do vulnerability assessment, pen testing, this, and I want to be the professional ethical hacker. Slow down. You'll have time to do that. Slow down. Get your basic, if you are looking at certifications, they're not the holy grail. Nothing is. There is no panacea. There is no silver bullet. It's all about being in the right place in the right time, building the relationships. And this is a very relational business. But they will get you, certifications will get you through the door. They are important for a broad base of knowledge. So if you are going to take the certification route, understand it's not a panacea. It's not a silver bullet. It is important. It does show a body of knowledge. It does show a benchmark, and employers are looking for that. But please try to stay as broad-based as possible until such time as you truly find the path to specialize. But they are valuable, but not more valuable than education. They're both co-equal, in my opinion.
Okay, that makes sense. Especially the building the foundational knowledge before diving in to one specific one. Nico, also, I never got a chance to say, I like the Art of War quote. Fantastic. We have a question. How do I shop certification boot camps? I hear a lot of them only teach the test, check the block, ask thing. Do you have recommendations on specific vendors or ones that you would go for?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So first of all, boot camps, I have a love-hate relationship with. There's only a certain amount of information that you can absorb in a certain amount of time. I mean, the mind can only absorb what the butt can handle. Okay. So if you're in a class for 5 hours in a seat, listening to somebody drone, doing PowerPoint, and you're taking 2 breaks a day plus a lunch, you're not going to get that much out of it. And even if you do, what is that retention piece 6 months later when I ask you a question about the bootcamp? There are plenty of reputable vendors out there in this space. CompT is reputable. Of course, you know, if you have the money, SANS is reputable. EC Council puts out some good courses. Obviously, Phase2 does. So, but I'm not here to pitch. But you know, there's when it comes to these, once again, certifications in the boot camps, let us not forget certifications are important, but the knowledge is more important. So before you go out and spend $3,000 doing any certification path, why don't you sit down and spend $40 and go to Amazon and go and pick up books. Start reading the books, start reading the certification manuals, start reading extra books. For every one cert you take, you might want to read 10 books on Amazon that are not dedicated necessarily to the cert. So there's nothing, this has to be a self-initiated process, because once you get the certification, just like once you get your undergraduate, graduate, postgraduate degree, it's a lifelong learning process. And that reading, that ingestion of knowledge should be a continuous thing that never stops anyway. So why don't you test the waters and go to Amazon and spend $100, $200 on some books, not necessarily certification, and see if something jumps out and gets an interest. And then you start to look, but never stop building that library and building that knowledge separate and distinct from the certs, because yes, a lot of them do teach to the test.
Okay, that makes sense. And that, you know, buying the book and seeing if the topic interests you before, you know, spending the $1,000 it may be on an exam, or a couple hundred if it's a CompTIA voucher for the test, you know, could save in the long run. And in the worst case, it just prepares you even more for that final test. So we have from Daniel, how important are programming languages and getting into cybersecurity careers?
Okay, out of the 52 work roles, approximately 40% are non-tech. I believe that everybody should know programming languages to some degree. Now, I make a distinction. You have programmers, and then you have knowledge of programming language. So subject matter expertise versus subject matter knowledge. If you have a basic knowledge of the higher order languages, if you're looking at Python, if you're looking at Java, or what have you, you don't need to be able to write script from scratch. You should know what it can do. You should have a general idea of what the language does. If it's object oriented like Python, you know, whatever it might be, what its practical uses are. But for all intents and purposes, even working in with like PowerShell, the tools today are so automated, and we have GitHub repos, repositories, libraries, code libraries. The resources are all there. I'd say it's more important to get that higher level knowledge first of what these languages do and where they fit. But make no mistake, there are plenty of people in cyber that never touch code who are very successful.
Awesome.
I've done it for 20 years, and I'm only just now starting it because AI, right? So machine learning is not going anywhere. It's going to continue to progress, right? To the point where a lot of companies are going to really rely on these new XDRs, which are the new SIEM technologies coming out that use AI. And you have to understand how to write, you know, a string of, because what we like to do is we like to glue things together and call that a script, right? And that's how we build our APIs. The APIs are really your bread and butter with the new SIEM technologies. So, you know, like Michael said, you know, definitely get that hierarching knowledge on it, and you can get it for free. right? You don't have to go spend $600 for a coding academy. You don't have to go spend, 3 months of your GI Bill to go do another coding academy. You don't have to go get a certification in it. But the Git repository, right? So as you're learning this stuff, definitely utilize your resources because that is a branding tool for you.
Absolutely. I would also say, if you're going to start anywhere, start with Linux. Start with Linux. CompTIA has a great book. You have Net Plus, Sec Plus, Linux Plus. Nobody ever wants to talk about that. There's a lot of practical application with Linux that we use that has absolutely nothing to do with being a hardcore coder. But I think if you're going to start somewhere, I do believe Linux should be part of your library. Not that you need to be a Linux sysadmin, but you need to understand it since so many servers are now converting over from Microsoft, Microsoft over to Linux based. So that would be my suggestion. Go after everything, but you have to eat an elephant one bite at a time. I would start with Linux, and my second choice would probably be start taking a look at Python. But once again, that being said, you don't have to master it. Just have knowledge of it, understand what it does. If the syntax makes sense, then you're great. Those who are good at speaking foreign languages, if you happen to be bilingual, programming is a language. People tend to do really well with it. It's interesting. I found that people who do not have a gift or an ear or an inclination to do languages, let's say foreign languages in school, tend not to make it on the coding side. It's a matter of language and interpretation and transferring your human mind thought into code the same way you would translating a language in your head before you spoke it out loud. So that would be my advice in support of what Paul said.
Awesome. Okay. The next question we have is from Anne. I don't think hackers have degrees or certifications. Why should we?
Well, here's the thing. I would agree with that. You have people that have natural gifts that are self-driven, self-determined. Now, there are some hackers that are lucky that get some good jobs that don't end up in jail. Hackers don't have to play by our rules. They don't have to show the same creds. They don't have to play by the same regulatory and compliance. They don't have the same budgeting constraints. They don't have the same anything that we have. It's a very uneven playing field. This, when you say, why should I have it? Well, that really depends on what it is you want to do. If you want to work for a Raytheon, if you want to work for an Equitas, if you want to work for a major company, and that major company, for whatever reasons they have said, we want to see benchmark entry-level certifications, then that's the reason you want to have it. Okay. Hackers are not going out and applying for jobs. You are. Well, I would think you are. Hackers don't have resumes either, by the way. They have street cred in the dark web. So for that matter, if you're going to ask, why should you have a certification? Why should you have an education? My question would be, why should you have a resume? Why should you have a LinkedIn profile? Why should you have any of that? Don't need that if you're a hacker. If you're a hacker, I got street cred in the dark web. People know who I am, and I get work, and I'm fine. But if you're going to play in sunshine, if you're going to play on the surface web, and if this is an expectation, be it right or be it wrong, from the corporations that we interface with, and it's an expectation, then you meet their baseline expectations. That's why you do it. Why should I get a degree? The job I want says I need to have. Well, I don't think that's right. Well, hackers don't have to have degrees. Yeah, but hackers aren't applying for the job that you are. So it's that give and take of what space you want to play in and what you're willing to do to make yourself attractive to the people who you want to be attracted to. That's the reason for that.
You hit a good point though, right? So degrees. It seems like a lot of schools, we talked about this in depth, a while ago. Seems like a lot of schools are just now starting to really treat it as a trade. And it's really a successful model. Because at some levels, I mean, you mentioned, there's 52 roles, 33 subspecialties. So pick your flavor of the 80 some odd roles available to you, right? And really discern at what level are you going to be writing reports. Because if you're looking at roles that are requiring degrees, look at those tasks on the job description, delivering reports, right? I can't take somebody out of high school at an entry level to write reports. They don't have that knowledge, right? But also look at the different schools and academies that are out there that are teaching this style, right? I can't talk anything but good about my experience with Phase 2. It invokes the clause to really challenge yourself to look at a report and discern it to where you articulate it in two fashions, right? Because as a cyber professional, you are communicating two ways. You have to communicate geek to your technicians. And now, because you're a cyber technician, you're protecting a business, you have to articulate the same thing into human readable executive. And that's, again, you got to look at those companies that are using that, right? Because if you're going to join just a regular SOC that doesn't have a huge client base that's like med tech or anything like that, those are the ones you got to question why they're asking for a degree, right? Because if they don't have an audience for that, you're not going to be challenged to write these types of vulnerability reports or these assessments or risk analysis that you would at a company that's targeting like PwC, Accenture, Florida Blue, and places like that.
Oh, absolutely. Good point. I would also do this on the report writing. Let me extend that a little bit further. And this is where that honest self-assessment comes in. My background is an intelligence background, and we do briefings. We still do it. We're operational intel. And one of the ways that we deliver reports when we're delivering after the process of converting raw intel into an intelligence product is by doing briefings. I have seen people pass by $75,000 jobs because part of the job is public speaking. And that public speaking may be a presentation to the board. It may be a presentation to other stakeholders, whatever it may be. So extending that report writing out a little bit further, let's talk about report delivery. If you see that job, and it's proven, most people would rather face a terrorist attack than speak in public, do public speaking. So if you see, well, Paul can't take somebody who's from high school to do that level of compliance report writing, also know that that's not the only way reports get delivered. We deliver them in person to boards. We deliver them to groups, to business units, to intelligence units, to whoever they may be. And if that is part of the job, if that's one of the KSAs and tasks, and you know for a fact that every time you step up in school in front of a group of 5 people, you feel like you want to have a heart attack, there are ways to compensate that and work your way through it and learn how to do it effectively, no doubt. But pay attention to that too, because it's delivering reports, writing being only one of those ways that reports get delivered. Okay, so pay attention to the fine print there as well, because I've seen people pass up great jobs because they have to present them personally and formally. And the thought of doing that in front of large groups of people terrifies them.
I think you can articulate that too on your interview, right? I don't have a bachelor's, I don't have an associate's. But if you deliver an interview with somebody and you wow them, they can look past your degree because you have a level of experience or articulation.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And if if you are sitting there in a hiring interview without the certifications or the degree, that means they have an interest. The fact that you're sitting there means they have an interest. Like we say in sales, they've already made a buying decision. Now all you need to do is validate that buying decision. Why should it be you? So by virtue of the fact you're sitting there, absolutely. And also remember, once again, I said in the beginning, certifications will get you an interview. Education will get you a career. And I still believe that. But once again, it's only going to get you as far as in front of the first level hiring manager. So after that, it's still up to you anyway. You have to wow them. You have to impress them. You have to show that body of knowledge and be able to communicate that effectively. And if you do that, it doesn't matter if you have what level degree you have or what cert you have. You're in front of the person who's going to send you to the next level. You have a good body of knowledge. You're able to convey that effectively, and you're fine. You're where you need to be at that point.
Right. Michael, and I feel like that goes back to what you were saying a little bit ago about the honest self-assessment initially. Because when you're looking at roles and deciding what you're going to get into, your ability to convey that information and effectively present yourself, whether it be if you're looking to go do so to convey what, cyber risk your company's facing to a board who doesn't understand it, or whatever it may be, if that isn't something that you think you can do, you need to be honest. And if it is, you need to take advantage of it. We have a question from Nathan that is, if someone is interested in an executive or supervisory role, what kind of training should they look at? If they want to be able to understand what their developers, security folks, et cetera, are working on to build and lead teams. Sorry for the weird pause.
Yeah, no worries. Depends where that executive position is. If it's in a startup company, then it's a relational issue. It's somebody that knows you and trusts you, wants you to be in on the ground floor and doing what it needs to be. If it's an executive position coming through formal channels, that's a different story, because now you're dealing with not only the hiring process and what the stated requirements must be, and you have to meet those requirements, but you have the shadow politics as well. Right? A lot of these job descriptions are written and posted with somebody already in mind for the job. That's why some of them are so obscure and abstract. But if you're looking at the executive level, then there are executive courses out there. There are executive certificates out there, advanced degrees that are out there. But when I'm thinking executive level, I'm thinking 10 to 15 year. And at that point, you're talking about demonstrable experience. You're talking about a good record. You're talking about a record of team building, a record of development. One of the questions we ask people when they come in for high-level jobs is not what have you done in your life, it's how many people have you caused to be promoted? What have you done to help people excel? What type of a developer you are, what type of mentor you are, that human capital development. So when you say the word executive, that's very broad, that's very big, and a lot goes into it. So without context, I'm not exactly sure, but I will tell you that there's, what you're looking at is there are executive level courses out there and executive level certs, but really at that point, it's experience, it's relational, and it's understanding the politics and the culture of the environment that you're trying to get into.
Fair enough. We have another one from Maverick Mejia. I like the Maverick. Cool. As someone who is considering transitioning out of the military and into the cyber world, how hard will it be to get an internship? Would I need CompTIA certifications? Any advice? Parentheses. I am currently enrolled at University of Maryland Global Campus. I believe that's what the acronym is, for a bachelor's in science and cybersecurity, and I'm also on TriHackney. Thank you.
Good question. No, you won't need that for internships. And anybody who says you need 5 years experience and a degree and 3 certifications for an internship doesn't know how to write a job description. Internships, by their very nature, are designed to give people the experience that they want. Now, we've got formal internship programs that we do through schools. We have internship programs that are run through NGOs like yourself, and through private companies like Phase2. and many others. We use interns, both paid and unpaid. But while you're thinking about that internship, do not discount the value of a part-time job while you're in school. I point this out because internships in and of themselves can be political as well. And you might get the internship, but it might not be the internship that you actually need. So if you do manage, you don't need anything to get an internship other than to impress the people that want to bring you on board, especially if it's not paid. But do not discount the value of a part-time job. Working 20 hours a week at Geek Squad or a computer shop or doing something on the periphery tangentially related to the thing that you want to do. If you're in risk management, if you want to do cyber risk management, you may be doing part-time working in an insurance company. But you understand what regulation, compliance, and risk mitigation is. So no, you don't need anything really to get the internship. But understand if you can't get the internship, or if the internship doesn't look like it's going to provide you value other than on paper, do not discount for an instant the benefit of getting a part-time job that's related.
I think I would also look at the intern to hires too. You know, if you look at the DOD skill bridge list, they've been growing substantially, right? You're getting paid by Uncle Sam for 180 days before you transfer out of the service. So you're not going to get paid while you're doing that with that company. And a lot of these companies that are offering skill bridge, they're offering certifications as part of their internships. So, you know, sadly, cyber is one of those places now. There's a lot of hybrid, there's a lot of remote, but if you're brand new to this, it's very, very hard to find entry level or mid level without hands-on experience to do remote. So oftentimes you do have to chase, you know, the places where the roles are. And, you know, look for, when you ask those questions, right? If you interview for somebody and, you know, you're in Texas and the job is in Nevada, ask what they have for a relocation package, right? Because in reality, if you're retired, you are going to have benefits, right? You're going to have your monthly retirement coming in. If you get VA rating, you're going to have that coming in, right? So, you know, 100% VA, obviously you have free healthcare for life. So use that as benefits should be your negotiation point. You know, you can have $100,000 paying job, but does their healthcare plan mean that you're paying $2,500 a month into their healthcare? Because there's some companies that do that. So you got to hone your negotiation skills and really talk to folks like Michael. Peter went through one of the negotiation classes with Hope White. You know, there's a lot of classes out there for you, so you don't have to go into this blind.
Yeah, and as far as, especially, I am not a cyber technical person myself, but as far as the interviewing and hiring process and salary negotiations and the handling the entire process, especially if you're first transitioning and you're not familiar with it, that is where you go, especially do informational interviews beforehand, because you'll get an idea of what they're willing to pay for the position, and what a certain company may have to offer from people who have been hired there, which gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can work with. And B, having a professional mentor to count on during that time who has experience throughout the process, so you can relay to them what you're hearing, is invaluable, because it can be confusing, and, you know, their hiring managers and recruiters aren't out there trying to get you. But at the same time, you can maximize what you get from them.
That's a good point. And what Paul said and what you said, that lends itself to a very ugly truth that people coming into cyber need to know about. It's the underbelly of cyber that people don't like to speak of. There are a couple of underbellies. And one of the underbellies of cybersecurity now, and it has been this way for the last 10 years at least, is the new trend. And it's not cyber, it's everybody. Back in the day when we had Big Blue, IBM, and other corporations, people could go and get hired and spend 33 years and be an engineer. We've transferred now to a contracting culture. And this has also hurt the ability to get jobs right out of the box. So in a contracting culture, they're going to hire you. It's try before you buy. And a lot of these contracts do have a, it's a contract to conversion to a W-2 employee. But while you're telling people that they should go out and negotiate skills and get hired and do this and do that and whatever, realize the number of direct hires, W-2 type, now that we are in a contracting culture, has become much less significant. And that has imposed a burden and hardship on people. Peter and I have spoken about this, where you have a job now with JP Morgan Chase up in Delaware. They tell you you're hired. It's $140,000 a year job. And you are just now doing a happy dance. They don't pay for relocation. They don't pay for anything. You show up. It is your job. You have to be work ready when you walk through the door in this contracting culture. Now, once you get there, if you are a star performer, after 3 months, 4 months, regardless of how long the contract is, they can then turn around and offer you that conversion to W-2 employment. But a reason a lot of these jobs are left unfilled is because people do not have the resources to be able to go from point A to point B and take a lot of these jobs. And that is a direct result of this new contracting culture that we have. Not really new, but take that into consideration too, because that is an ugly truth that people are going to need to face as they walk into this industry.
So you mentioned the contract to hire. What's your thoughts on the contractor? Like, if let's say I see this job, they're looking for a contractor, and it's 9 months. All right, what should I expect going into that role? Should I expect that I need to have my resume ready to go and start applying for more roles? Or should I weigh on the benefit that they're going to hire me?
It depends. It depends on the state. It depends on the type of job, whether or not you're taking the contract to pay the bills, whether or not you're taking the contract because you actually enjoy it, how much of a hardship contract it is. A lot of these contracts are 11 months. However, because of the way the hiring process works, after 3 months, they reserve the right to then offer you a job if they want to. If they're not going to, they'll typically let you know a couple of months in advance, at which point you're dusting the resume off. I know people who stay contractors, who do not want to be W-2, who have worked 10 jobs in 10 years. Now, in the day, that was a bad thing. That showed a lack of stability. Now, it is not the same thing. You also have other state regulations, like here in Georgia, where you cannot be a contractor for anything more than 18 months. And that's to stop the 1099 abuse. So corporations can't turn around and hire and continue to renew your contract, making you an employee without having to pay benefits or having to pay all the taxes associated with having you as an employee. So that really depends on how you view the contract. Do you want to move around a lot? Do you want to change companies? Sometimes the only way to get promoted is to lateral transfer. And the only way to lateral transfer is to contract with a new company, in which case contracting isn't bad at all. So personal circumstance, the company you're working with, the job you're doing, what their W-2 conversion process is, and what your long-term goal is, will dictate whether or not that contracting space is positive or negative. Just understand that the day of walking into a major corporation and being hired as a W-2 straight out of the box for this in this space is not as prevalent as it used to be. And that then gets compounded by the recruiting culture, which is a whole nother issue unto itself. But what should they expect? They should be able to expect to walk in, go to work. If they can understand the corporate culture, if they blend, if the manager likes them, if they like the manager, and they indicate an interest in stable employment and wanting to be in that area, then they start talking and doing a negotiation process of are you actually looking for W-2s? But there are plenty of these SOCs. There's plenty of these organizations out there that do the contracting specifically, so they don't have to do the W-2, in which case they're turning over entire staffs every 11 months. And in my opinion, that doesn't give people enough time to even know what the corporate culture is all about. So that's my answer to that.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I think the 1099 culture is, it benefits some, and some people do like the ability to move between companies, but it's being kind of over leveraged by companies as a trial period at the expense of a lot of entry level employees. So, it's something to keep in mind, and it's an ugly truth that needs to be realized. Daniel asked, I'm trying to get my master's in cybersecurity. Can you suggest some good programs in schools out there on a more lighthearted topic?
Yeah, actually, I have some friends that went through that University of Maryland Global Campus. They seem to be getting a really, really great reputation. And one of the things that I've heard most about them is the speed at which you can do it. The workload is intense. Make no mistake, it's not the speed because you're not doing the work. But I just had a friend go through and get a master's through that particular campus. I've never been there. I can't speak to it personally. I can't vouch. But that being said, there are a lot of good master's programs out there. The one thing that I've heard repeatedly about the University of Maryland Global Campus is the speed. It takes approximately a year if you can continue your studies and do them regularly, because they're not working on your traditional 16-week semesters. So if the goal is speed, and they're reasonably priced, I've heard as well. So, but if you're using GI Bill or whatever, it's covered. Just understand that if you're using that, at some point they have to do some type of a hybrid class because it can't be 100% online. But I've heard a lot of good things about that school. I've also heard some good things about American Public University. American Public for the masters, American Military University, it's the same thing. American Public University system, but they're two separate entities for the postgraduate work. And then the last one I've heard some really great things about is Purdue Global Campus. So never having done my graduate work at those schools, but knowing people who have been through, I cannot speak directly, but I have heard a lot of good things.
So I'm actually just getting into my degree, and I personally shopped 180 schools, and I met with 70 of them. Interview them, understand what they're teaching, because a lot of colleges, a lot of community colleges are just adding cyber to the name. And then when you actually solicit and ask for that syllabus, you realize that it's a syllabus that's going to teach you how to be a help desk technician.
Definitely. Yeah. I think looking at the learning outcomes that school produces and, how they actually intend to get you there will always be a, worthwhile use of your time, especially if you're going to make a large investment like a master's. Really check out the school and also see what kind of support they have for if you're struggling in a certain area or program, because some are a lot better than others and a lot more responsive, regardless of what topic you're studying.
One other caveat to that to add in, and as we transition, cyber is the big thing, is the bandwagon. So unfortunately, what a lot of schools are doing as part of their transition process is they're taking their existing IS, right? Information systems, information technology, but mostly they're information technology, and they're creatively renaming them to fit more of a cyber persona, right? And that to me, that may have been part of the transition process while this was first coming on board. But one of the things that you want to look at is take a look when you look, somebody says they have a cybersecurity program in the master's, and this is what we study. Just as a comparative, right? Trust but verify. Go and take a look at what their master's in IT looks like and put the two of them side by side and make sure that they are differentiated. Because like I said, a lot of these schools are renaming a lot of their courses that are existing to fall under newly created cyber departments. And if you're looking at the course descriptions, the catalog descriptions for network security and a cybersecurity program, and then you're looking over here in an IT program, and you happen to notice that the verbiage is identical, that is probably what you're up against. So as part of that system of checks and balances, do that comparison, because a lot of schools are doing that to speed up their time to market to be able to offer cybersecurity programs in the space.
Right. And also to sound like a broken record tonight, I'll do it. Daniel, if you're looking at a specific program and you're really interested in it and you think you have your mindset, that's where a professional mentor comes in handy, because you can show it to them too and get their opinion. Sometimes getting an outside opinion can help. And also, if it's someone that's experienced in the role you're looking for, they'll know if that's going to prepare you. So Luis is wondering, does cybersecurity go along with STEM?
Yes, it absolutely does. That's where it falls. However, there's a caveat. There's always a catch. If you are looking at it from the degree perspective, it typically falls under STEM, because you have information security, information technology. However, what if you graduate with a minor, let's say you graduate with a minor in information security or information security management, but you have a degree in risk management and compliance. If you look at, once again, 7 categories, 33 specialty areas, 52 work roles of the NICE cybersecurity framework, risk management is one of them. Now, at that point, would you be able to walk into a cyber job? Yes, you would. Would you fulfill a cyber role? Yes, you would. Would you be STEM? Not really. Your minor would come from that. But cyber is just so diverse and so interdisciplinary that when you say cyber almost doesn't mean anything anymore. Okay. Somebody says, what do you do? I do cyber. Well, okay. 2081 KSAs and tasks associated with cyber. Which one of them do you do? So it falls under STEM if you are leaning more towards the sciences, information technology, information security. It does not lead more to STEM if you're looking at some of those other areas, but typically schools will bundle their cyber programs within their STEM divisions of the campuses.
Awesome. So Michael, I think this is the last question I have for you, and I really appreciate it. For those who don't know, Michael has been up for 36 hours straight, and you wouldn't be able to tell by his responses, but I figured now that you've, gotten some sharp responses off, it's fair that I let the crowd know that you were kind of battling through. So I'm going to hit you with one more question. It's a little broader and overarching, but it's commonly occurring, especially for people we encounter. And that's people who have some experience in the cyber world, but a lot more in the military. Maybe they're just getting on, they're just doing try hack me. And they're trying to translate their military skills to a civilian hiring manager. And they've heard the 101 tips, but it's not working. What advice would you have to really use and leverage your military service to a cybersecurity specific hiring manager?
Converting MOSs to civilian credit, converting MOSs into civilian resumes has become an art and a science. And I believe you had a guest just recently that excels at doing that. I would start that way before ETS time, just to make sure. The hiring managers now, one of the big benefits that I will say that military does have, and it depends the industry that you're going into. If I am leaving the military and going to work for Lockheed Martin, if I'm working for Boeing, if I'm working for Raytheon, military speak is going to get me right to where I want to be, because I'm already working into the military industrial complex. However, if I'm transitioning out into the softer side of civilian, that's where we need to start to massage some of the skills. So it really certainly depends on the vertical that you intend to go and work with, but there's a plethora of resources out there right now that can take not only your military job description, the MOS description, but anything that you've done and convert that. And schools have now made an art and science of being able to do that in their registrar's office. So every established program on every like green zone campus, the yellow ribbon campuses, whatever it might be, in their registrar's office, usually through the Veteran Outreach Center that's on these different campuses, they'll have a list. They'll have the resources there available that have already done that for transfer, not only transfer credit, but taking what you've done and transferring that over into parlance that would be more equivalent to the civilian equivalent. But like I said, you don't need to do that if you're stepping out of the military and then walking into a job with the military industrial complex. They would rather have you be that way and keep the original parlance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that definitely does.
That's a good point too, Michael, right? So we talk about the DOD Fedramp, right? So the 8140 and 8570. The reason why someone like Lockheed or Raytheon or something like that's going to hire you with having no hands-on experience, as long as you go get this piece of paper called Sec Plus, is because you're going right back into an organization where you use standard operating procedures, right? If I'm working help desk on the DOD, I have a SOP to follow. If I'm doing vulnerability management, I'm following an SOP, right? And they know that your brain's already filtered on that. So that is in one case where you can actually go out and get a certification and land a job pretty quick. However, right, you got to look at that leeway time, right? DOD is the only place that you have to have a waiver to go work federal. But understand there's other federal entities out there. You can go work for Department of Education. You can go work for Department of Agriculture, right? Because they're still a government entity and they still follow the 8140 and 8570. And you don't have that 180-day gap of unemployment.
Absolutely. You also have recruiting, even though there's plus and minuses with recruiters, especially if you were fortunate enough. Let's say I have a TSSCI, where you do have a clearance, and that is part of the hiring requirement. I cannot begin to tell you how many people come to us looking for people that have minimum training, but please let them have the clearance. The clearance is the important thing. So there are a lot of other benefits. But in that case, the contracting works out really well, because there are a lot of contracting organizations that do support these DOD, these US Army installations. That's going to be my background, where they hire specifically to put people onto these. Warner Robins Air Force Base, Hunter, Stewart, whatever it might be. And that is what they do. And it's very easy for people to walk out front gate into this contracting, to walk back into the gate a week later. And that clearance and that knowledge of the environment helps out significantly in doing that. And in that particular case, contracting is a dream, because you're basically ending up back in the same job that you were in, almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot of the reason why that waiver came about for the DOD is because you have places like the EKMS vault, dealing with ComSec, where you have a first class that can't make E6 or can't make E7, right? And they know that nobody that is E7 or above is going to want to fill this role. And they know that this role as an EKMS manager isn't something that somebody wants to take. So they write these packages to civilianize it. And they write the package to be the first person, right? And that was happening all over the DOD back in 2012. And that's why we have this 180-day grace period. And I'm glad Roderick put it out too, right? So if you transition out and you didn't retire, that waiver doesn't apply to you. right? Because you didn't do a full 20 years. You're not double dipping the benefits, so to say.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that answered it well. So I'm gonna give it a second. If anybody has any more questions, you can shoot them in right now while I'm talking. But if not, I'm gonna send the Phase2 Advantage website in the chat, as well as the website for the whole Cyberhuman initiative. Michael, thank you so much for coming on, especially after working these crazy weeks. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed listening to your answers to the questions. And Paul, thank you as well for coming on and offering some insight. It's always appreciated, and I always like to see whole cyber out here. So thank you both so much.
I had to join. I mean, Michael, he did us a solid, right?
Definitely.
I got the benefit of doing the program with Phase 2. You're muted, Michael. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, Michael, we've got you muted.
Yeah, my wife wishes she could do that to me with a click of a button too. It's okay. No, I'm thrilled to see people here, and I'm see they're interested. Here's the thing. Nobody said it was going to be easy. I will tell you it's going to be worth it. Start it early, take the initiative, read books, build your library. Successful people have big libraries, and unsuccessful people tend to have big TVs. So build the library out, get the knowledge, get it in your head, get exposure, don't be specialized, get the broad foundation, take advantage of every resource, and do your due diligence. You've got time. You've got time. So do your due diligence, and there's plenty of us out here, Whole Human and Boots to Books and Phase 2, once again, a plethora of other organizations. And we help where we try to the best of our ability. Take advantage of all the resources. Why not? There is no reason for you to go through the learning curve if somebody else has felt the pain before you, unless that happens to be your personal preference. So, but anyway, Peter, it was great to be here with you and your crew today. I do appreciate the invitation. It was an honor. Anything I can do to serve you or those that you're serving, let me know. And I just want to thank everybody for being here, and everybody I had a chance to meet. It was great.
Fantastic. Well, I'll release the recording and I'll post it on YouTube, and also post a LinkedIn post referencing that YouTube link on Monday. So people can go back and use this as a reference, because I think a lot of the things said are very much needed to hear for a lot of the job seekers we encounter. So thank you, Michael. I'm actually going to use this as a reference video. And so for anyone who wants to see it, Monday will be the day. If not, thank you all so much for coming. Make sure to follow Boots to Books on LinkedIn. Keep up with us. We have events every month, regularly share transition tips, and we're really here to help you. Everything is free. So with that being said, have a great weekend, and thank you again, Michael and Paul.
You bet, folks.
I dropped one last link.
Oh,
go for it.
I dropped one last link. It's the CISA framework, right? We talked about the 52 roles. We talked about the 33 subspecialties. This website will literally tell you what the tasks, the duties, the responsibilities, and what certifications really matter for those roles, right? Because a Security Plus is not a Band-Aid if you want to go do, network intrusion. So this really helps lay out groundwork for you. It's a lot of stuff to digest. It doesn't really touch cyber. And I'm actually going to talk to Michael on the side about that. We're going to be rewriting the NIST 800-183, putting the board together. So definitely going to pick your brain on that.
no worries.
It's huge. Know where you want to go.
Awesome. I definitely agree. Target that job search and reach out for help. With that being said, have an amazing weekend, everyone.
Have an outstanding weekend, Peter and crew. Paul, thank you, and for everybody being here. I'll catch you later, and please stay safe this weekend.
Awesome. You as well.